Welcome to SUSD Spotlight, your go-to source for all things happening within the district. Whether it's celebrating student and staff achievements, delving into trending education topics, or highlighting inspiring human interest stories, we've got you covered. Join us as we illuminate the incredible endeavors taking place in our schools and forge connections within our community. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and engaged as we embark on this journey together, spotlighting the extraordinary in SUSD. Welcome to another edition of SUSD Spotlight. Today we're excited to have in studio two SUSD legacies, Paul Ferrero, who is currently the principal at Mohave Middle School, and John Corte, who is a first-year teacher at Saguaro High School. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So you might be wondering why we ask you here. And in part, it's because you are legacies of success, and you're also recipients of the Scottsdale Charros Scholarship for Future Teachers. But before we get into that, I'd love to know more about your experiences as students in our district. So, Paul, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I went through our district K-12 through the Arcadia complex, going through Tavon Elementary School, followed by Ingleside, and then graduating from Arcadia High School in 2003. It was a great experience the entire way through. I always had multiple opportunities to try new things along the way, whether it was academics, sports, and after-school clubs. I always loved how SUSD was more of a neighborhood school, and that was a big push for me as I got older. My mom was a former Scottsdale board member, so she's serving on the board, and so really entrenched with our community. So I've always loved that. I do live back in the Scottsdale community in the Arcadia complex as well, so it's always been home, and from K through 12, it's always felt like home, and I've had great experiences with the teachers and faculty and staff the entire way through, and even now as an educator.
What did you like most?
What did I like most? I just think the camaraderie that, the community that I grew up in, and, it was very diverse. I thought also, too, Arcadia is a special complex. You get families from all sorts of means, and that was a great real-world experience for me, and I think that also helped me as I got into my college years, and just having that different lens of working with different people from different backgrounds, and I thought that was very something important that I really take to this day, too.
Great. Johnny, what was your experience like?
Yeah, similar to Paul, I think the idea of just how neighborly SUSD has always been a fan favorite of mine. I've always loved just how my best friends from Pueblo were then the ones at Mohave and then the ones at Saguaro when I graduated in 2020. Something about the community feel to everything was just so apparent, both in just the students, the families, the staff, the custodial workers. It was just really cool to notice, especially at a young age. I kind of noticed that, this is not like school, like a job. This is school as another family, another home to go to 5 days in the week. And I've always appreciated that. It's kind of why I'm here now, so.
Well, each of you obviously identified at an early age what you wanted to be when you grew up, because you must have known you wanted to be a teacher to apply for a future teacher scholarship. Do you remember when you decided that you wanted to be in education and what it was that sparked that interest?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I will gladly. Well, I went to a summer camp centered around student government and student leadership, and I loved it, and that totally threw my perspective of education, like what it can do for students who don't know what's going on and what they plan on doing during and after high school. And I loved it, and I found myself in cool leadership positions. So I told my friends all about it. I'm like, what job is that? This is my junior year. So I'm like, what job is this? And they're like, you're a teacher. I'm like, you're just being a teacher. You're facilitating student experience. And from now on, it was not at all a plan I had even the year prior. But once I knew, and I ran with it. And then the idea that SUSD and Scottsdale Charros offer a scholarship to make that happen in state, especially at SUSD, wanted to come home. It was really cool. I was really appreciative of to take on the opportunity and to fortunately have it handed to me through Scottsdale Charros. So it's been really cool to have SUSD be so appreciative and give opportunity to future teachers.
Okay, mine was a little funny. I always loved sports. It's always been a big hobby of mine. Really enjoyed coaching. Would always try to help out when I was at Arcadia as a student. Always helping out in the lower levels when the varsity teams would be practicing in the evening. And back when I was in school, Arcadia had a program. I'm not so sure if it still exists or not. But basically, there was a class where we could go down to help at Tavon Elementary School. And so my godmother, Margaret Cerna, was the principal at Tavon and actively recruited me like, hey, we need some help. You're good with math. Would you come help? I'm like, yeah, sure. I thought that would be a great, fun experience. Got to get off campus for a little bit, and, she may have, bribed me with a few lunches here and there. So that's always nice.
Food.
But I really kind of fell in love with it because it was nice working with the kids and seeing their growth and, all the impact that I had. I mean, my teacher was like, oh, you got to come down in your varsity Letterman jacket every Friday when you guys have a game. I'm like, the kids really take to that. And I was like, really? I had no idea. And it was really, then on, I thought I was just doing it, it was for fun for me to help everybody out. And actually the teacher that I worked with went to Margaret and my mother and were like, he's really got something special here. Like, this is something he really should tap into with teaching. And at first I was like, I was like, we'll see. But as this time wore on, I did it my senior year after my junior year, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And, the icing on the cake was kind of, I could coach too. So I thought that was huge. And so that was kind of the little carrot that got me going. And then when we found out about the scholarship, I jumped on it immediately and was fortunate enough to be granted part of the scholarship. So.
And did you both want to come back and teach in Scottsdale?
Yeah, I eventually, when I got out of college, I spent some time with ASU, kind of put us all throughout the valley. And my mom had worked in the inner city in Phoenix and Maryville area. And I kind of did my student teaching there. And I felt I wanted to start there because I felt I could have a better impact. And, Scottsdale has always been home. And that was kind of, eventually that was going to be the goal. But I thought starting out with, I wanted to start there where I could make a huge impact off the bat. But as time went on, I was like, okay, it's time to come home at some point. And so.
And you taught?
I taught middle school math.
Okay. That's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. From time to time.
And then to echo Paul, exact same thing. I think just the idea of coming home, attending Arizona State, not too far away from Scottsdale, the idea of coming back to our alma mater, or at least the district, was a vision that I've always seen myself once I knew I'd become a teacher, to come back and teach in the spaces that I grew up in, being inspired in. It made sense to come back and be that person for a new generation of kids after graduating.
So what do you teach?
I have junior and sophomore English.
Okay, so you're what I would call a near peer because you graduated in 2020. So how is it coming back on the campus where you graduated during that COVID impacted year?
That is correct. Yeah, what a year, But it's really cool because there's been slight adjustments and improvements with Saguaro. All great, so it's cool to take a step away after graduating. And then unfortunately, I student taught there my senior year, and then found myself taking over a classroom as a full-time sub for a couple months. And just from even that end of year last year to now, just seeing like the growth and diversity change for better at Saguaro is just really cool to see. So it's not my old same high school student body, but that's the point. It's these kids' school experience. It's now cool to foster it as a teacher and not just a peer.
And you coach too. I mean, we heard Paul talk about the opportunity to coach as a teacher as well, and you're doing some of that yourself?
Yeah, I started out with, Paul thankfully brought me on as a flag football and track coach last year. And loved it. I played sports for both Mohave at the time, so similarly came back doing what I did, but with a new group of kids. And now, I'm coaching the inaugural flag football girls team for Saguaro. It just came from their practice, and first game next week. And it's a really cool thing that AI is doing, especially now in SUSD. It's a new sport to show, the whole state what our athletes can do in a new environment, a new way. So it's really exciting to be part of that history.
How many players do you have?
We got about 20.
Okay,
we filled our roster quickly, so it's cool to see that the intrigue was there. We're really excited.
So what are if we think about the state of education, not only in Scottsdale, but Arizona and around the country, what are the issues that you think are the most important for people to be aware of? Parents that are considering coming to your schools or dealing with the kind of challenges that you're seeing day in and day out?
That's a good question. I think the challenges that we see is just sometimes the lack of workforce that we have each year. As schools grow in size or that swifts or changes into different directions, it's always a staffing shortage, and that's been a hard part, especially now being an administrator. Didn't see that so much when I first got out of college, but definitely there has been a shift. there's a greater need for educators, and right now it's very hard to fill at times. Like, I've been very fortunate at Mohave with being able to start the year and fill our positions, but there have been some times where it's come at the last second and it's been, nerve-wracking. So I would say just, the one thing that I think we all face sometimes is just that lack of the workforce that I think once was there is not as strong as it used to be. And definitely after COVID, that was a big one.
So I wonder, you mentioned that people identified a talent in you, and you talked about having that aha moment at the camp. How do we get young people coming through the system who have aptitude, interest, and ability to consider teaching as a profession? Because oftentimes in the current environment, teachers don't get the kind of respect that I think they deserve. How do we convince young people to consider this as a profession?
I think, getting them as involved as they can in schools. One thing I'm very proud of our NJHS at Mohave is they try to give back to the community right away. They help out at Navajo. They help out at Pueblo. We're working with trying to help out with Kiva. I think getting young folks involved with the community and involved in school functions, but sometimes it's more of when you go down to a lower grade level than what you're currently at, just to kind of, you can see the impact, you can see you're making a difference, and the kids respond to you, like sometimes even more so than an adult, because they also, while I'm, several years older than the elementary school kids when I was in high school, that gap was still there. It wasn't a big gap.
Right.
Like, they could identify with me, and we could, have a good relationship that, hey, we're all students still. But I think that was huge. So I think the more opportunities we can get young folks to help out and serve and see the importance, and then, when I found out that we made some growth that year and the students that I worked with, that really hit home for me. I'm like, oh wow, I did not expect that satisfaction coming back from that, and it just kind of made me hungry and hungry.
So there's purpose to the work, where
Yes.
you're actually making a difference in the lives of another human being.
100%.
Yeah, and I feel like in very few occupations, like, you can see the change happen right in front of you. Like, something about teaching is very cool just to watch that inspiration, like that aha moment in someone else happen in front of you.
Right.
You could take some time and, like, who knows how long. But as a teacher, I've always told my peers at ASU and other teachers around the valley, like, why should I keep doing this? I'm like, because if you spend a week or two in class doing your thing, you'll notice the kids realize their aha moments and answer their whys, why they want to do whatever they want to do, because you were in the position to get them there. And that's been cool. Even for a first year, I've noticed that in a few of my students where it's like, oh, I see why I need to be here, or I was meant to be here, to show someone else why they need to be here as well. And it's really, I don't know, I can talk all day about it. I love it. It's the first year of me talking. I love it. But it's just really cool. Like, watching change happen in front of you for things that you're doing, or being just by accident, just being a presence on campus. Students love that, and that's what I'm trying to still pick up on. Like, just a kid goes, yo, Mr. Corte,
Right.
and I go, hi. I forget that might make their week or their day, because they may see me more than who knows what other adults in their life. So that's been a perspective I've been turning on from student to teacher, and it's been really cool.
Well, and speaking of that aha moment and the growth you all have as educators, you're still sort of students yourself, and you've grown quite a bit. Now you're a principal. So I'm wondering about that leadership pathway, and when you identified that as best for you. And Johnny, if you have leadership ambition or goals that you're setting in your mind.
For me, it was, again, I think sometimes it's just fate and how things happen. I always did some extra interventions at my first school I was at. We did a lot of Saturday academies, and my principal, trusted me a lot to run them for him. And towards the culmination of my second year, he's like, I don't want to put this in your head too early, but I see you as a administrator at some point. And I was like, oh, yeah, we'll see. And funny, GCU came in. They had just started their online program, because at the time I was coaching varsity football and JV baseball at the feeder high school in Phoenix. And I was like, well, I really don't have time to do this. So that opportunity came, and since it was all online, it just it meshed well. It worked. And then as time went on, I if you would have asked me, like, probably as young as Johnny here in my first year, I was like, yeah, I could see myself being an athletic director at the end of my career and kind of seeing how that goes. But funny thing is, things just happened in a way where I felt like I was ready by the time year 5, and my principal kind of was pushing me. He's like, I think you're ready to go and do it now. Then I was lucky to come back to Scottsdale to Coronado High School. So that's where I began my administrative career, and that's where it just kind of took off from there. And so really enjoyed it. I do miss the coaching aspect. So there are some things you do give up, going from teacher to administrator. But, now I feel like my impact is a lot more global than when I just had it in my classroom. And that's how I kind of look at it now. It's, okay, there are some things, the competitive side of me was like, well, if this person can do this, I think I can do it better. Or if I can open some more doors for kids, because I've seen certain things as a teacher that, maybe people don't advocate for, now I can advocate that I have that platform. And so that has been something that, as I've moved on, is what doors can I keep opening for kids, and what, doors can I keep opening for staff to keep growing as well, because that's something that you also have to take into consideration, is making sure your staff is growing and going in directions they want to go as well.
Still a teacher.
Yeah, still a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the few months I've been doing it for real now, I've learned that there's so many pockets of leadership, not just for the students, but like leadership for first-year teachers with the first-year teacher cohort, all those individuals we have. So it's really cool to kind of put that on the back burner of like, if I want to, elevate beyond the classroom, I'll have to go right to principal, right to superintendent, right? Not gonna happen here, don't worry.
It could happen.
Wow. But there are many pockets of leadership that I love, both athletics and the arts, department heads, first year cohort. It's really cool to notice how many systems and teams there are that support not just students but teachers alike. So I really enjoyed just absorbing that all on our new teacher orientation, just our high school orientation. There's so many teams looking to support teachers, and I've loved that. Yeah.
Well, and we have a lot of community partners, the foundation and the Charros, that support our teachers, that continue to look for opportunities to grow in their field, of course. And this Charros scholarship is actually, they award 2 of them every year. It's $25,000 for a 4-year scholarship, which is pretty awesome. And I know that students can start applying as soon as January. So that's something for our other future teachers out there to be on the lookout for.
Absolutely, and we love to hire the Scottsdale Charro future teachers back in our system. At the end of every podcast, I like to ask our guests to think about a teacher or someone within the educational system who's had a significant impact on your life. Too often our teachers are unsung heroes, and we like to be able to elevate the profession. I want to give each of you an opportunity to share someone who had that kind of positive impact in your life that you would like to just lift up today.
Is there a maximum or?
Yeah, that's
and there's no right or wrong answer, but some people have had a hard time identifying just one.
I'll be one of those. It's hard to identify just one. I mean, I've been fortunate, like all through my experience in SUSD, that I've had at every level. There's been somebody. I think it's given me I would say that the most was probably, even though not an academic teacher, I'd say my high school football coach, Jim Bevel, taught the PE with our athletic director, but he gave me a lot of leadership opportunities at a young age. And that's something that now looking back, I think helped me tremendously at the time that I didn't know about. I mean, he was a big advocate of me going down to working at Tavon. He'd always instill like, okay, you're representing not only Arcadia, but, our football team, everybody around, and kind of really explained to me the responsibility of, carrying that weight and as being a leader, how, there's a lot of unsung things that nobody's going to recognize you for, but there's also some things that when you step out into the light, this is who you represent. You represent a lot more, and that was a very valuable lesson. And he allowed me to take the bull by the horns at times, and I really appreciate that. And then he also got me started with my coaching career. When as soon as I graduated, I was hired on to Arcadia's football staff. So I would say Jim Bevel definitely would be one of my top ones right there.
Thank you, Paul. Johnny?
Yeah, I feel like a big shout out is just for my parents, both educators through SUSD and other districts statewide. Just exposing me to what education looks like. Even as a kid, I noticed that this is like, I'd hang out on Saguaro's campus for 20 minutes and then walk over to Pueblo. and just seeing the big high school kids and then wave at teachers and stuff. I was like, this is really cool. And I could probably name every teacher I've ever had, drop of a hat, like right now. But the one who I didn't have is who I want to shout out. Katie Maloney, currently at Saguaro. This is probably her third year now. That's who I was doing taught under. And talk about someone just setting me up for success, doing all the hard labor to give me the 1% of the spotlight. So, look at the student teachers, they're killing it. I never really got a chance to shout her out because of the circumstances of me taking over as a full-time sub. So Katie Maloney has done amazing work a few years out of college at Saguaro, and just this is my chance to shout her out, give her props. That definitely set me up for success and made me the teacher who I am today.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And we are both very proud of you as SUSD legacies, and so grateful that you've made the career decision to invest in the next generation of leaders here in Scottsdale. And we want to thank you for sharing your stories today, and we invite our listeners to stay tuned for future episodes of SUSD Spotlight and subscribe to hear more inspiring stories from the heart of Scottsdale Unified School District.
And we hope that our listeners will also pitch us ideas, and you can do so on our website, susd.org/spotlight.